We are facing a tough budget season following the pandemic, with a lot of things that need to be taken care of in town. For that reason, we are looking for savings anywhere it can be found. When looking through and dissecting the RAM proposed 21-22 budget as presented, I will use generalizations for ease of understanding. The total operating and capital improvement budget requested is approximately $30 million. In the projected enrollment numbers, it looks like there will be approximately 1,200 students enrolled. When doing the math, that comes out to a figure of approximately 25,000 per RAM student. However, the budget booklet says that RAM has a per pupil number of 17,739 per student using the state documentation system. When you do the math of 1,200 students multiplied by the state number, the total budget number would be 21,286,800. This is a difference of 8,713,200 that is in the RAM 21-22 budget as currently proposed. It is also a difference of $7,261 per RAM student. Do we really need to spend an additional 8,713,200 over and above the state number in order for RAM to operate? I understand that some of this difference and extra money goes to things that are not included in the state's applies states apples to apples per pupil comparison of budget numbers such as transportation, special education costs, etc. My point is to inquire for all the towns involved is, with the enrollment numbers that have fallen significantly over the last 10 years, do we really need to keep asking the towns of Andover, Marlborough, and Hebron to come up with this difference of almost $9 million each year? I think the time has come to look at the overall budget total dollar amount and make some cuts where you can due to the facts that I have presented you with tonight. Thank you for your time. Joanne Hebert, Town of Andover resident.
And Stephanie, I can respond a little bit. I think Joanne brings up a really excellent point, and that is that if you look at the per pupil expenditure, and then you actually divide the number of students into the budget, as would be true for any of the districts in the state, the numbers don't tend to jive. And the reason for that is the state has a very complicated formula for calculating their per pupil expenditure for each town. And the reason for the complications aren't to try to make it confusing, but it's really to try to ensure that it provides a consistent comparison from one town to another. So, because you're looking at large urban areas, you're looking at small rural towns, you're looking at suburban towns in the middle. There's a lot of variance between each of the districts. The intent in coming up with these calculations are to ensure that when we compare, we can ask the question relative to each other, how are towns doing in supporting their school system? So Joanne is right that the actual cost is more than the 17,000. And I think the important piece here is not so much to look at that difference, but to ask the question, where does RAM fall in the continuum across the state in comparison to other towns, as far as how much we spend for our students to providing our education. So, the comparison I would throw out is the fact that out of 166 districts, RAM is 104. So we're in the lower half of expenditures for education. Amongst the secondary districts, and there are 8 secondary districts that RAM is included with, and these are districts that are essentially 7 through 12, we are the lowest. And, because it costs it's a different type of funding to support an elementary district than it is for a high school district. So I think the comparisons amongst the secondary districts is probably the most pertinent. And here, we go down from RAM 17,000 to, region 1, 29,000. So there's a significant difference there. I understand where, looking at those numbers, it's certainly appropriate to ask the question, do we need to spend all of that money? I guess my argument would be that I believe we do. I believe that in comparing to other towns, RAM is extremely conservative, that RAM is spending about as little as we possibly can and still produce the outstanding results that we do. If you look at RAM students, look at the success of our teachers in moving our students forward, we're rated as one of the top high schools in the state, in spite of the fact that we're not spending the money that a lot of other districts are spending for their students. And I think that's a testament to how careful our budgets are crafted, how careful the oversight of the Board of Education in the 3 towns are over the RAM budget. So I understand the question, but I do think that, when you look carefully, you'd see that our budget really represents what's necessary to fund the quality of education that we all, hold so dear. So I understand the question, but again, I think it's, we have to be careful of how we use those numbers. And it's really more for comparison to other districts as opposed to comparing it to what our actual expenses are.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Are there any other questions or comments? You can speak out at this point or raise your hand if you're on camera. Joe?
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Well, again, we always field these questions every year. I get a little defensive, I guess, is probably the right word, when people say you're taking a 1,200 students times, call it 18,000, and this is the number. There's a lot of that goes into it, and Scott is pointed that out. We are a very good school. We are on the lower spectrum of all of these per pupil numbers, but the calculation isn't that easy. Just taking a number of $30 million divided by 1,200 students. There's a lot of other things that we need to articulate that to our taxpayers and say, hey, this is what we have. The biggest part of our budget is special education, and that seems to be always forgotten. And when we're looking at a 1.6, and last year we were at, call it a net, 0, when other towns are like Andover, Marlboro, and Hebron are all, coming in at 3, and this year they're coming in a lot higher. Our job as a Board of Ed members, and this, we represent our towns, but I think we've done the valiant effort of working with the superintendents in the past, as well as Scott this year, to get an incredible return on investment, and it doesn't come cheap. And some people think that it's just black and white, and I don't want to be offensive to those people, but there's a lot that goes into this that people need to just understand what really goes into these numbers and where we stand on a state level. And again, I think as board members, we support the administration. They're the ones who really should take all the credit for the teachers and the administration to get us to where we're at, and look at why people want to move to Andover, Marlboro, and Hebron. And I mean, I'll say it just doesn't come cheap. And people have to understand, when you look at your property values and all these things that come into it, why people want to move to your town is because of your school system. And we have done a phenomenal job of trying to make up for the inequities of or the deficiencies of this school when it was built. We all know that we didn't have any, too much stake in that, but we have to make sure that we protect our investment. And this is a big, big investment. It's the largest investment in all of the our town budgets. But I would just think that we have an honest conversation with our taxpayers and say, it's not easy to say it's just $8 million that we're frivolously spending. The people that write these letters need to maybe come to a few of our meetings and understand what really goes into this, than just, easy throwing. We're not an easy target, but we should be more, they should be more engaged and than just arbitrarily saying that RHAM is an expensive school. When you look at E.O. Smith, that is, I think we're a better school than E.O. Smith personally. And our cost per pupil numbers are what's it, region 19, Scott, is it?
Yeah.
And what's the delta difference in that? I think it's probably $8,000 or $9,000 per pupil. So I don't know how people can argue that their ROI is and then we're the easy target, that we need to cut our budget more when we really have a lot going on, and as a high school and a middle school on top of that. So I'll stop it at that. But I do appreciate the people's comments. But I really do think that when people make comments like that, they really need to get a little bit more involved and understand what is behind the scenes in our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, I'm hearing none. So we're going to be going into a different link for our special meeting. So is there an motion to adjourn the
Rob will make a motion.
second?
Mary, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're all in favor. So we'll be reconvening to our special meeting in the other link, which I believe is also a public meeting. We'll be voting to adopt the budget. So thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you for your comments and questions, and thank you, Scott, for your presentation.
Great. Thank you. See you in a few.